Okay, let's unpack this. When you think about the American jury system, I actually find it really helpful to picture a combination lock, like a really heavy-duty, intricate one.
Oh, yeah. That's a great way to look at it.
Right, because you have 12 different tumblers inside that mechanism. And for the lock to spring open, for a verdict to be delivered, every single one of those 12 tumblers has to align perfectly.
That's exactly perfect.
It doesn't matter if 10 of the tumblers click right into place. If just one or two get stuck, the entire mechanism just refuses to budge.
It just completely locks up.
It does. And today, we are looking at a combination lock that absolutely refused to open. We are going to dig into the recent mistrial in Harvey Weinstein's third Manhattan sex crimes trial.
Right.
And this is all based on some really extensive reporting from NBC News dated May 15th, 2026.
Yeah, we really have a deep stack of sources to go through today. I mean, it ranges from on-the-ground courtroom reporting to, high-level legal analysis.
Right. Plus, we have public statements from the prosecution, the defense, and even some of the jurors themselves.
Which is so rare, honestly.
It really is. And I just want to assure you, the listener, right up front, that our goal today is not to take sides or to, adjudicate the case right here in the audio.
Absolutely not.
We're just here to impartially examine the mechanics of this trial, look at the evidence as it was presented to the jury, and try to understand the friction that caused this specific group of 12 people to deadlock.
Right. So let's just step right into the room where that deadlock actually happened, because this was not a situation where the jury just, threw their hands up after an hour and walked away.
Oh, definitely not.
They deliberated for roughly 9 hours. And that was spread out over 3 incredibly tense days inside a Manhattan courthouse.
3 days is a long time in that kind of environment.
It's intense, and the central charge they were debating was whether Weinstein raped a former aspiring actor, Jessica Mann, in a Manhattan hotel back in 2013.
Right. And we should note Weinstein pleaded not guilty to third-degree rape, and he has consistently denied all allegations of non-consensual sex.
Right, so 9 hours over 3 days, that really tells you that there was this massive effort to reach a consensus.
Yeah, think about it. You have 12 strangers locked in a room arguing over the granular details of a decade-old encounter.
I can't even imagine the pressure.
It's immense. But eventually, they sent a note to Judge Curtis Farber stating they were just fundamentally unable to reach a unanimous decision.
Yeah.
And Judge Farber looked at the situation and made a very blunt declaration. He said, and I quote, "I see no reason to go any further."
Wow. Just like that.
Just like that, he declared a mistrial.
But, the detail that completely changes the whole complexion of this story, it didn't come from the judge.
No, it didn't.
It actually came from Weinstein's defense attorney, Mark Agnifilo.
Right.
He walked out of the courthouse, and he just revealed the final tally of the jury's vote to the press. And it wasn't like an even 6-6 split.
Not at all.
The final vote was 9-3 in favor of acquittal.
Yeah.
And he used that specific metric to publicly urge the district attorney not to retry the case. He argued that, the defense had made their points and the jury had clearly heard them.
Agnifilo was playing a very specific public relations card there, I think.
Oh, totally.
Because in the court of public opinion, or say in a corporate boardroom, a 9-3 vote is a landslide victory.
Yeah, exactly. If 9 out of 12 people agree on a direction, the company just moves forward.
Right. What's fascinating here is the absolute rigid requirement of a unanimous verdict in American criminal trials.
Yeah.
Because legally, a 9-3 vote is mathematically identical to a tie. It's a non-decision.
Wait, okay, but if the vote was 9-3 for acquittal, why would the DA even consider pushing forward again?
Well,
doesn't a strong majority like that signal to the prosecution that their underlying case is just fundamentally broken? Like, if you present your absolute best evidence and 75% of the room says not guilty, trying again feels like a massive gamble.
it is a gamble. It definitely is. But you have to look at the math through the lens of the prosecution.
Okay.
A 9-3 split absolutely represents deep division and, widespread reasonable doubt among the panel. The defense clearly dismantled crucial parts of the state's narrative in the eyes of most of those jurors.
Right.
But it is not a legal exoneration. The presumption of innocence hasn't been legally affirmed by the panel.
Wow.
So, the district attorney looks at those 3 holdouts and sees concrete proof that a conviction is still theoretically possible.
Wow.
They see 3 people who, despite hearing the best arguments from a highly paid defense team, still believe beyond a reasonable doubt that a crime occurred.
That's a really intense way to look at it. It also just highlights the psychological pressure inside a deliberation room.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, imagine being one of those 3 holdouts. You are sitting across a table from 9 people who are emphatically telling you that you were wrong.
Yeah, that the evidence doesn't support a conviction at all.
Exactly. To hold your ground for 3 days under that kind of social pressure, your conviction in the defendant's guilt must be rock solid.
That social pressure is a massive factor, and we actually have a really incredibly rare window into that room.
We do.
One of the jurors, a 57-year-old visual artist and sculptor named Josh Hadar, he actually spoke to reporters outside the courthouse.
Oh, wow. What did he say?
Well, he emphasized that the jury genuinely tried to reach a decision. He said they were respectful, they listened to each other, but the overarching consensus in the room was that Jessica Mann's statements contained just too many contradictions.
Right, and NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos provided some vital context on what those contradictions likely were.
Yeah, he did.
According to the reporting, Jessica Mann continued to correspond with Weinstein for years after the alleged 2013 rape.
Yeah, and that ongoing correspondence is just a monumental hurdle for any prosecution to overcome.
I bet.
Prosecutors argued to the jury that this kind of ongoing contact is actually quite common among sexual assault victims.
Right, like it's a well-documented trauma response.
Exactly. But Cevallos pointed out that regardless of the clinical psychology, some jurors might just be predisposed to disbelieve her claims precisely because of that ongoing correspondence.
Here's where it gets really interesting. This is where we see a massive collision between the rigid expectations of the legal system and the messy reality of human psychology.
Yeah, that tension is huge.
Think of human memory and post-trauma behavior, not like a perfectly linear timeline, but like a scattered jigsaw puzzle.
I like that analogy.
Right. When a traumatic event happens, the puzzle box just gets dropped on the floor, the pieces scatter under the couch, some get flipped upside down.
Yeah.
And when a survivor is trying to survive in the aftermath, like maybe maintaining contact with an incredibly powerful industry figure out of fear or denial or career preservation,
Yeah.
they're basically trying to build this puzzle in the dark with missing pieces.
Right. This raises an important question about how the law handles trauma, because the problem for the prosecution is that the legal system essentially demands that the puzzle be perfectly glued together and framed before you even walk into the courtroom.
Wow, yeah. It doesn't allow for the messiness.
Not at all. The law operates on linear logic. A leads to B, which leads to C.
Right.
And the defense attorney leverages everyday common sense. They stand in front of the jury and say, hey, if someone harmed you in a hotel room, you would run away and never speak to them again.
Because that is the logical A to B?
Exactly. So when the reality is that the victim emailed their alleged abuser 2 years later, the defense just points to it as a broken puzzle.
Which puts the prosecution in a near impossible position.
Completely.
I mean, they have to act as clinical psychologists to educate the jury on the counterintuitive nature of trauma, while simultaneously acting as lawyers trying to prove a physical crime occurred years ago.
Often with zero physical evidence, yeah.
Right. They are basically asking the jury to ignore their own gut instinct of how they think they would behave in a similar situation.
And remember, the burden of proof in a criminal trial is beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
So when a juror looks at an email sent by the accuser to the defendant years after the alleged assault, the defense doesn't actually have to prove the assault didn't happen.
They just have to plant a seed of doubt.
Exactly. They just have to use that email to plant that seed. And if that behavior seems unreasonable to a juror based on their own lived experience, well, that seed grows into reasonable doubt.
And the prosecution loses that juror's vote.
Precisely.
Yet, despite how brutal that process clearly is for an accuser, Jessica Mann actually released a statement after the mistrial that speaks directly to her own resolve.
She did.
She said the mistrial doesn't in any way detract from her truth, and she noted, I think her quote was, she chose to testify in 3 trials because she's telling the truth.
Yeah, that phrase 3 trials, that is the crucial context for this entire discussion.
It really is.
To really understand the immense weight hanging over this specific Manhattan courtroom, we have to look at the macroscopic timeline of Weinstein's legal history.
Because this mistrial didn't just happen in a vacuum.
No, not at
So
all.
let's trace that timeline back because it is incredibly convoluted but absolutely essential.
Right,
Weinstein was first convicted in early 2020,
right.
and that conviction involved the third-degree rape charge regarding Jessica Mann. But then in 2024, a New York State appeals court actually overturned that conviction.
They did.
They essentially wiped it away and ordered a completely new trial.
Yeah, and the appeals court overturned it based on a very specific, highly controversial procedural error regarding what the legal system calls prior bad acts.
Prior bad acts. Okay.
Yeah. So in that 2020 trial, the judge allowed prosecutors to bring in women to testify about allegations that were not directly tied to the specific charges Weinstein was facing in that courtroom.
Right. The prosecution was trying to use this testimony to establish a pattern of predatory behavior.
Exactly. But the appellate court ruled that bringing in those outside allegations unfairly prejudiced the jury against him.
Wow.
This is one of the deepest philosophical tensions in American law. Do you put a person on trial for a specific act on a specific day, or do you put their entire character on trial?
Yeah, that's a tough line to walk.
It is. The appellate court ruled that by allowing testimony about uncharged crimes, the trial judge essentially asked the jury to convict Weinstein because he was a bad person with a history of bad behavior.
Rather than requiring the prosecution to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he committed the specific crime against Jessica Mann.
Right. And the appellate court argued this violated his right to a fair trial.
Which, means the system is functioning exactly as it was designed to.
Right.
Correcting perceived procedural errors, even when the defendant is a universally reviled figure.
Right. The system is supposed to be blind in that way.
But the whiplash of that has to be devastating for the accusers. It necessitated this retry for the charges involving Mann. And between that overturned 2020 trial and the mistrial we are discussing today, there was a second, completely separate trial last year.
Yes, there was. Last year, Weinstein faced a different set of charges.
Okay.
He was convicted of a first-degree criminal sexual act against a former production assistant named Miriam Haley. And that was an event dating back to 2006.
Wow, 2006.
Yeah, but in that very same trial, he was acquitted on a first-degree criminal sexual act charge involving a former model named Kaja Sokola.
You look at that track record and you just see the absolute unpredictability of a jury.
That's all over the place.
It really is. You have a conviction that gets overturned on appeal. You have a second trial that results in a mixed verdict, one conviction, one acquittal. And now you have a third trial ending in a deadlocked 9-3 mistrial.
Yeah. And through all of this, Weinstein remains behind bars.
Right.
He is currently incarcerated because of other sex crimes convictions in New York and Los Angeles.
And his physical condition has also drastically changed since this whole legal saga began, hasn't it?
It has. Courtroom reporting notes his health is visibly declining.
Yeah.
In 2024, he was diagnosed with bone marrow cancer, among other medical issues. He is a frail man sitting in a wheelchair now, which is a stark contrast to the absolute titan of the entertainment industry he was just a decade ago.
Oh, absolutely. He was the Hollywood kingmaker, co-founder of Miramax, producing Pulp Fiction, Shakespeare in Love. The hashtag #MeToo movement essentially started with his downfall. Nearly 100 women accused him.
Right.
Which brings up the sheer stamina required by these accusers to keep walking into courtrooms year after year, facing aggressive cross-examinations. Especially while the man they were accusing is already sitting in a prison cell with a failing health diagnosis.
It's a grueling process.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? From a purely pragmatic standpoint, why is the state spending so much time and so many taxpayer resources to keep trying this specific charge from 2013?
That's the big question.
Right. If he has multiple convictions keeping him behind bars, isn't the public already protected?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, that question really cuts to the core of what the justice system is actually for.
How so?
It highlights the dual obligation of our courts, the friction between macro justice and micro justice.
Macro versus micro.
Yeah. On the macro level, the system is designed to hold powerful figures accountable, deter future crimes, and protect society by removing dangerous individuals from the public sphere.
And if you only look at the macro level, Weinstein is in prison. The system's utility is fulfilled. The box is checked.
Exactly. But the state isn't just prosecuting Harvey Weinstein, cultural symbol of abuse.
Right.
They are prosecuting a specific charge regarding a specific person.
Yeah.
The justice system also has a micro obligation, a localized, deeply personal duty to individual citizens.
So to Jessica Mann.
Right. Jessica Mann is an individual accuser who has a fundamental right to her specific day in court. The justice system argues that her right to pursue a verdict does not just evaporate because the defendant happens to already be incarcerated for crimes against other people.
That makes a lot of sense. A conviction for a crime against Miriam Haley does not legally address the harm allegedly done to Jessica Mann.
Exactly. The localized duty remains.
It's the difference between simply warehousing a criminal and formally acknowledging individual harm.
Right.
But now, that process is at a standstill. The immediate next steps rest heavily on the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. DA Alvin Bragg actually released a statement saying his office will consider their next steps in consultation with Jessica Mann.
Yeah, and Bragg expressed clear disappointment that the proceedings ended with a mistrial. But he also made a point to state his deep respect for the jury system.
Yeah, you kind of have to respect the process.
You do. He thanked the jurors for their time and dedication. He has to recognize that those 9 hours of deliberation, even though they ended in a deadlock, they were a serious act of civic duty.
Absolutely. Well, before we wrap up today, we want to make sure we share an important resource that was cited in the NBC News reporting.
Yes, very important.
Given the sensitive nature of the material we've been discussing today, if you or someone you know has been sexually assaulted, you can call the National Sexual Assault Hotline at 1-800-656-4673.
That hotline is run by RAINN and the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, and they can connect you with local support.
Right, and you can also access their online chat service directly at rainn.org.
So as we leave you today, consider the broader environment surrounding this courtroom. We've talked a lot about the mechanics of the jury and the localized details of this trial.
Yeah.
But in an era where high-profile cases play out in the global media for nearly a decade before a trial even concludes, is it still possible to find a jury entirely free of cultural baggage?
That's a huge question.
I mean, the 2017 exposés against Weinstein permanently altered the cultural landscape. How does the intense public legacy of a movement like that alter the way objective evidence is weighed in a localized, supposedly sterile courtroom?
It really makes you wonder if a sterile courtroom even exists anymore. The tumblers inside that combination lock aren't just reacting to the evidence presented on the stand.
They aren't.
They are reacting to a decade of headlines, shifting cultural norms, and, the personal biases of 12 strangers just trying to make sense of a broken puzzle. Well, thank you so much for joining us as we unpack the complexities of this case. Take care.